authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce, the Redneck Radio Man. Joining me today is Brett Oldham, and we're going to be discussing his book, Children of the Greys. And as I understand it, he's a long-time experiencer of being an abductee. And that's what his book's about, is sharing his experiences. And he's going to tell us a little more about that here in just a minute. But first, I wanted to let y'all know, if you want to learn more about him as well as the show, you can go to www.childrenofthegrays.com/hostbaby.com. And as well as that, also wanted to mention everybody, if y'all want to ask questions, the call-in number's 832-632-7904. For you users out there that have Mac, I've recently not upgraded, but installed a Flash player so y'all can listen to my show live instead of just in the archives. iTunes listeners, YouTube listeners, come on over to www.talknowradio.com and get a free membership to the site. It'll get you in the chat room, and we can ask questions in chat. You can talk to each other in chat, and we can, in general, have a pretty good time. So, how you doing today, Brett?
I'm doing great. How are you today, Royce?
Oh, I'm doing just fantastic. I want to thank you.
The rain to ever stop here in Tennessee. I think we're all, it's been nothing but rain every day. So, we're hoping the weekend was going to be dry, but once again, we get showers here. I don't know.
I didn't know you was in Tennessee.
Yeah, I live, just south of Nashville.
My wife used to go down there every year almost to visit her mother in Pigeon Forge.
Yeah, that's a beautiful place over there.
But recently her mom passed away, so that's, discontinued that trip. Nothing left to go up there for anymore. She used to go up there and visit with her every year, and they go visit the Cherokee Indian Reservation just over the mountains there in, I think it was, North Carolina or South Carolina?
Yeah, just over the mountains there. There's, I can't remember, it might be called Cherokee, North Carolina, but I know where you're talking about, just from Gatlinburg there.
So when you said Tennessee, I was like, oh, wow, small world. So, now she says every time she goes up to Tennessee, they pick up EVPs and they hear a lot of ghostly phenomena going on. So you're telling me it's just as much extraterrestrial activity going on as well?
Well, actually, Tennessee has a lot of strange stuff going on, and she's absolutely right. My wife Gina and I do a lot of paranormal research and have for a very long time, and Tennessee is just loaded with haunted locations and paranormal activity. A lot of it's with the war and everything, and there's just a lot of they're big on keeping history here and keeping buildings preserved, and so you get an opportunity to go into some great locations, but it's just in general a very mysterious state. There's a few states I've found around the United States that's like that, and Tennessee definitely has to be one of them. There are a lot of UFO sightings here as well. Matter of fact, we were just sent, a lady that had bought my book contacted me, and a lot of people have been doing that, especially abductees that haven't really had anybody to talk to about it. And that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book, was to bring more awareness to the public about just how a wide-scale phenomenon this actually is. But also I wanted to be a voice for other experiencers and people that have, like I did for so many years, that kept quiet about it. And but yeah, we just got she sent us a video I've ran it through the software a couple times, and I'm more of an audio expert than I am video, but Gina and I are pretty impressed with the UFO video that this lady got, and it wasn't one of those just blinking light, blurry light type things that most of the time you see when it comes to UFO related stuff that's caught on film. This was it was a sighting at dawn, so it was right over the city of Nashville. So, pretty impressive stuff. But we get reports all the time, and people that we work with, the same thing. A lot of activity in this state for sure.
Oh, I can pretty well imagine there's a lot of activity there. I mean, it's in the South, and I think the further into the deep South you get, the more the activity gets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At least that's what I've heard tell.
Most of my, I lived in Las Vegas for 27 years, and I had a wide variety of experiences while I lived there, and of course, you got the Area 51 just north of Vegas there, and I don't know if there was any correlation between that or not, but I did have quite an array of experiences while I was living in Las Vegas.
Okay. Well, I wanted to come back to your book, and we started off this show a little bit unusual, but coming back to the normal format, I wanted to ask you, what was it that got you started on writing this book? What was your motivator?
Well, I really wanted to. I just got to the point in life where I knew I had a lot to offer and say about. I had a lot of memories and very detailed about the memories, and I've kept quiet about it for a very long time. And I just kind of got, it's like, well, I'm not getting any younger, and I really wanted to bring this out to the public, but I didn't really have the courage for a long time to risk the ridicule that was involved with it, number one, and I just didn't want to relive it, basically. It's very traumatic to go through these things. It definitely leaves a psychological scar on anybody that's experienced it. And I knew that it was writing a book, I would pretty much have to relive these events. And but my wife, Gina, she encouraged me, and a friend of mine, Sandy Nichols, who's also he has the Alien Research Group, and we had met him a few years ago, and he was one of the first abductees that I actually talked to about my experiences, and he kind of encouraged me as well, and it turned out to be a very difficult thing to do. It took me 2 years. I'd have to stop. I would get depressed. I would start reliving these things, and I don't know, I just kept nudging forward, and I would take a break, and then Gina would kind of encourage me again and just told me how important it was to let people know about it. And it turned out to be a very therapeutic thing for myself as well. Once I was finished and once it went public, I felt so relieved, because it was just, it was something that I didn't, I mean, when you talk about keeping something quiet, keeping a secret, and I'm not the only one. There is a lot of people out there that's going through the same thing, but it's just not, I don't recommend it. It's just too hard, to deal with it on your own. And I did it for a very long time. And, I'm telling people all the time that's had these experiences, like, there are people that's going to listen to you. They're going to believe you. Fear just controls everything in so many aspects, and people are afraid, what's people going to think of you, but in my case, I mean, I had a pretty good reputation, as a good guy and, good character and all that. And so when I come out with this, I didn't have this, perception of being crazy and, walking around with tinfoil on my head and talking about Martians and stuff like that. And,
so they take it a little more serious.
Yes. I mean, they're still the haters, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've been attacked. There's no doubt about it. And I knew that people feel threatened by this because sometimes the truth's hard to accept, especially when it comes to certain belief systems, and they're going to lash out and attack, what they feel threatened by. And that's happened. It's just part of it. And I knew that, and it's not easy to take, but because they've said, some people said some very personal things that just it's just so extreme. It's unbelievable what people come up with. But in the long run, it's been more positive than anything, with the acceptance, and especially with the people that have told me that my book has helped them so much from that they might read something that happened to me and say, yes, that's very close to what happened to me. I didn't know, because there's details that I go into that a lot of abductees haven't. I mean, there's minute things that you notice and stuff during these events, especially, I mean, this has happened to me since I was 5 years old, and it was suppressed most of my life. I remember the first two events, and after that, they suppressed it, and it came to the surface in my 20s, when I started having severe anxiety attacks, and I ended up in therapy from it. And, that's when it all came to the surface. And it was so, and to show you to the extreme that people go to keep secrets, when these memories start coming out, after I was going through therapy, I didn't even tell the therapist. So, I wasn't one of these people that some of the skeptics will say, well, like Bud Hopkins used to get this all the time, that he was coercing the answers from, the people that he was doing under regression therapy. And that was not the case with me, because I never went under hypnosis for the abductions. I wouldn't even tell the therapist about it. I didn't even want to accept it myself. Actually, it took me a long time to come to terms with it.
Well, yeah, I would imagine you wouldn't want to accept it, because I've heard tell, I've never experienced it myself though, that some of these examinations they do on board is, well, for one of a less crude term, say, personal.
Oh yeah, and it absolutely is, and that was one of the things that I made sure. I mean, I put everything in the book, and some of it was embarrassing, and you feel ashamed of it, but then at the same time, I've kind of overcome that, because you realize that everything that you were subjected to and put through, you had no choice in. It's not that you go and do these things willingly. I mean, everything, you're controlled from the get-go, and you do. There's nothing you can do about it. There's no way. You have no choice in the matter.
Well, as I understand, they have you paralyzed, so you're totally immobile.
Well, partially yes, but then even when they don't, they're still controlling you. It's hard to explain, and it's hard, a lot of people to get their head around, but the mental capabilities of these beings are just beyond comprehension. And you're not paralyzed the whole time, but even when you're not, I mean, I've been up walking around. I've been to the main experiments do have a sexual nature to it. They do a lot of experiments where they're monitoring your emotions. Some of that stuff is extremely cruel, where they tap into your subconscious, and they use that basically against you. And it screws with your mind like big time. And when you exhibit, and they monitor, and you exhibit all these different array of emotions, and after a while I realized that what was going on, doing some of these experiments, some of these procedures, and I've tried my best not to play into it, as I got older. And they actually picked up on that. I mean, they realized it, like I wasn't falling for it, some of the stuff anymore, of the scenarios that they would set up. But it's not just merely an examination where you're laying on the table like the movie show and things like that. It goes way beyond that. And that's a lot of what I covered in the book. They're running a hybrid program. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And I actually had an incident with another person, that was my girlfriend at the time, and she was pregnant, and we both were taken together, and they had knocked off an old typewriter that was in the room and woke us up, and she saw him and I saw him in the room with us, and then they removed the fetus from her. And she was 1 month shy of 4 months along in term, and they forced me to watch it. It was like all part of monitoring how I was going to emotionally react to it, and that has to do really with the hybrids, because I believe the hybrids have the emotions that we do, or at least partially, and I think they're trying to learn on how to deal with them and handle them by constantly monitoring, the emotional makeup that we have. But yeah, she ended up like, the next morning, we found blood on the bed and took her in and, to the doctor, and, he says, I think you may have lost a baby, and they did a procedure called a DNC. He came out of after the procedure and was just shaking his head, and my mom and her mom were both down there at the hospital, and they were witness to it. And he's like, I can't explain this, but the womb was completely clean. There was no tissue in there whatsoever. That shouldn't have been the case. And because it was like this woman was never pregnant. So, in fact, we did a show, for Destination, on Discovery Channel, Destination America, one of their episodes, Desert Wasteland, and they featured that on there, as a couple of my, events, and that was one of them. And I didn't even know, I hadn't spoken to her in at least 15 years, and I didn't even know what she remembered about it or anything. So, but there you have like two people that, experienced a pretty profound thing, and both to this day, and this was in the late 80s. I mean, both to this day have the same exact memory of it.
Now, I've heard tell you, once this happens, you never forget it. You were saying something a minute ago, though, about them studying emotions that got my attention, and maybe I just watched too much Star Trek, but, Spock, the way they described his planet was, their emotions that got the better of them. They had a great war, and they shut off their emotions because of it, to learn how to live in peace. What if there was a real life scenario on these Greys planet, and they did that, and it backfired on them, and now they're trying to figure out, before trying to get their, welcome their emotions back, how to cope with it without it getting out of hand?
Yeah, that's an interesting theory. I've always kind of felt that, the reason that the small Greys seem to be devoid of emotion is I think they're really biological robots, that they just all seem to work basically, in a hive mentality. They just do the job, not much communication whatsoever, with you. And the tall ones, are clearly in charge, have dressed differently, pretty much give the orders to the small ones. But that is an interesting theory. I always wondered if it was a thing where that they had evolved, it relied on technology for such a long time that they just sort of lost it along the way. Much like people talk about now, like kids playing too many video games or something like that, and they get desensitized, and maybe that's the case with them. I mean, their bodies are very frail, they're very atrophied compared to us. I think that's another thing that they're interested in humans as a physical specimen. And the sexuality thing, the emotional part of that has more to do. They obviously have figured out, how we reproduce, but they do seem to have an extreme interest in our emotional makeup. And it's funny because, hey, we haven't even figured it out, we've got all kinds of psychologists and psychiatrists and everything, and they can prescribe a lot of pills, but I don't think we've even figured ourselves out. So good luck to them,
Yeah, one of the things I've wondered about is I've heard people report that they had like anal probes. I can understand the vaginal probes that dealing with hybrids and some of the other examinations, and maybe I'm viewing this from a perspective of them thinking like I think they should be thinking about how does it profit me. But I wouldn't be able to figure out how would that profit them. What would they gain by learning about that particular area, or even about, say, your feet or any other area for that matter?
Well, that's why I think too much emphasis is made on that part of abductions, because that the physical examinations initially, are pretty thorough. When you're like in my case, when I was a child, I just remember going into hysterics about it. But generally, what happens is when you're first there, there will be like a brief examination. I call it the intake room. It's usually the same place every time. And the small ones will be kind of, just a brief examination, but it's not really that much of a thing. Like personally, I have no memories of any kind of anal probe. But, I do have, memories of them extracting sperm, on several occasions. And I understand, the reason behind that, but you're right. I mean, they have figured us out, physically. There's no doubt about it. They do seem to lean toward a particular, there's particular traits that they seem to favor. And there's particular ethnic mixes that they seem to favor. Not to say that they don't, take all kinds of people, but, in fact, I recently found out, and I knew this anyway, but I didn't know what the exact numbers were, but, they say it's about 45%, have a combination of Native American, Irish and Celtic. So, they seem to, something genetically about that seems to appeal to them. And that's exactly what I am. So,
maybe. That's interesting. I mean, the one thing that Native Americans and Celtics have in common is spirituality.
Right. Yeah.
Most Westerners are, and even a lot of the Middle East folks are known more for religious than for spirituality.
Right. And there's a big difference.
There's a huge difference. They're looking for for people that are of a spiritual nature. Maybe they're looking for samples for seeding or something.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely something to that, because before I had another researcher talk about that, and I have like that's what I believe too. It's like what the people that I have come across myself, I start talking to them, and like I said, it's not everyone. This stuff's happening all over the world. It's happening on such a large scale, and I hope that more and more people start coming out. But there does seem to be, like, if they find certain families, they'll stick with it for generations sometimes, which is one of the biggest fears that you have when this happens to you, that they're going to take other members of your family or children or your wife or whatever, because I worry about that maybe my wife Gina doesn't have the genetic makeup that they're looking for, but I still wouldn't put it past to take her to possibly implant her and monitor emotions, her emotional reaction to certain things that has to do with me and that type of thing like that. It gets really deep, and there's nothing, you got to sort of open up to all the possibilities of what these guys are doing. And it's really hard to feel like you have your own life after a certain amount of time. And every time you go to bed, you're wondering, like, well, are they coming again? Luckily, as I've gotten older, the frequency has subsided quite a bit, but it still happens. And so you're constantly living with that type of thing too, knowing that anything or anyone associated with you has that chance of being taken too, and it's just not a comforting thought. I wouldn't wish this on anybody.
Yeah, I wouldn't either, but I did read in Kathleen Martin's book that a lot of people that are kidnapped, they're like generational abductees. In other words,
yeah,
like your father or mother or both might have been abducted for all you know.
Right, and oddly enough, there's people that this happens to that never has a memory of it. But, oddly enough, my mother did tell me that when she was 14 or 15 or somewhere around in there, that she said that she thought it was a dream, but she doesn't have any idea what she dreamed of. But she remembers being on this some sort of craft with really sophisticated equipment that she didn't understand or recognize. And, she was sort of in this chair type thing that leaned back, and there was these strange looking men that were doing stuff to her. And that's about as detailed as she got, but that really raised my suspicion that same thing could have possibly happened to her at one time. Sometimes they just take people one or two times and that's it, and then others, the unfortunate people like me, it just never stops. I mean, it really just depends on what they like. If you have something, if it's working for them, you can bet that they're gonna keep coming.
So there are some people who just may not be suitable matches for their needs that are not, picked up again and again. In other words,
yeah, I think so. I think whatever it is, genetically especially, or perhaps when they're going into people's subconscious and seeing what's there, or who knows? I mean, really, there's nobody to 100% know. But whatever it is that seems to be what they're looking for, sometimes people just it's one maybe one experience, that could be it, and that's it, and they'll never have another memory of it or never thinking it. I've talked to several people like that. They're just like, well, no, just one time, and even if they've went and tried to get regression and stuff, they still only remember the one time. I mean, there's people like Travis Walton. He thinks it just happened one time. So, granted, it was for several days, but I've talked to him personally off the record, and he's told me that he never thought that they came back for him.
That's interesting, because I talked to his friend Steve Pierce here. I actually talked to Travis back at the same time I talked to Daryl Sims in that same year, for the same convention, in fact. But recently I talked to Stephen Pierce, and I'd have to go back and listen to that show to be sure, but I think Steve told me that he had been abducted more than once.
Oh, really? Yeah, I don't know. I know who he is, but that's interesting. That
I think what may have happened in their case.
That he's talking about Travis, or Steve's talking about himself personally?
Himself.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking that could have happened in that case is maybe he was the original target, and Travis was just there and put himself in the line of fire, and they just took him for one time to check him out. Didn't like him. He wasn't a fit match, and they just continued on with Steve.
That could very well be. But there's an example, though. I mean, where it's whatever they are after. That's certainly what they're going to stick with.
Well, I know there's been a lot of talk amongst the ancient alien groups. Not all of them, as you know, the people have their own set beliefs, and they get in their own groups with their beliefs. And with the ancient aliens, you got some that they don't even get involved in the serpent seed and the messianic seed. Some of them, they take sides between one or the other. But what I'm saying is, for some groups, though, there is this belief that we were seeded by these extraterrestrials. If they were correct, that could be the seed they're looking for as their own.
Yeah, I've wondered about that too. The Anunnaki and all that. I've really wondered about that may play into it somewhat. I mean, there is quite a bit of evidence that suggests that there's a lot of evidence that suggests that kind of thing actually went down. People don't like to delve into it too deeply, because I think it kind of rocks a lot of the religious boats the wrong way. But it's a fascinating thing to take the time and to start looking into, and that could very well have something to do with this and play into it.
Well, yeah, especially if you were noticing that It was the North American and the Celtics